Welcome to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly produced by Ravens Recruitment, the experts in pharmacy career and locum services for over 30 years. Every episode is your gateway to new opportunities in the pharmacy profession. From expert advice to inspiring success stories, we're here to spark ideas, guide your career, and help you achieve your goals. Stay tuned. The next step in your pharmacy journey starts here.
Hi everyone and welcome to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast. I'm your host Christy Lee Patterson and today's guest is someone who perfectly embodies innovation in healthcare. Kenneth is a pharmacist by training and a product leader by passion, having led some of Australia's most impactful digital health projects, some of which most likely using in your pharmacies today. So from launching e-prescription functionality during the COVID-19 pandemic to introducing new pharmacy platforms, Kenneth's story is one of bold transitions, thoughtful design, and community-driven change. Kenneth, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast.
Thank you so much, Christy Lee, for having me. It's an honour to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Kenneth, take us back to what inspired you to study pharmacy. It's a question that I ask everyone. Being a pharmacist, what inspired you to go down that path?
Yeah, so it's going back a while now. Basically, my family has always been in healthcare. So my parents worked in healthcare. My brother ended up studying vet to become a vet. And naturally, I saw myself looking at healthcare careers as well. And when I was in high school, I spent some time working in a pharmacy, just a nice local suburban community pharmacy. And I just, had a really good time there. I really liked and respected how the pharmacist worked and operated in the pharmacy. I could see that basically the local community would always, go to the pharmacist and ask him lots of questions. They'd just have conversations. He'd be on first name basis with basically a lot of the regulars. It was just a really nice, comfortable environment. It just felt like a really good place to have a career and job. So I really liked that, my time there, and definitely shaped my decision to enter pharmacy.
Oh, that's brilliant. I had a similar experience where I started working in a pharmacy before I decided to study pharmacy as well. So I definitely think that really helps you to prepare for what the industry is actually like after graduating. But what was your early experience like as a community pharmacist? Was it what you expected?
Yeah, I ended up working in some very busy pharmacies in metropolitan Melbourne in the eastern suburbs. So I worked in a few, some of them were very, very, very busy. So definitely there were very good moments in still being able to, engage with your patients and spend the time with them to help them with any queries they have. And that was really good. But at the same time, I was always also juggling a lot of other responsibilities and lots of prescriptions that would always be coming through. So it was, definitely a challenging time, but a very formative time in terms of, growing in an environment and being accustomed to, operating with a lot of responsibilities and, a bit of stress and leading the team. But it was definitely a really good stage early in my career to help grow and be able to be comfortable in a lot of different situations, challenging situations. Also really appreciate the time that I do look back on those times fondly in terms of having built up really good camaraderie with your dispensary colleagues. That's something I've never quite been able to recreate, I guess, because of just what everyone goes through and everyone just kind of connects really well. Everyone's kind of fighting the same fight and having, just a really good bonding, I guess, through the challenges of pharmacy.
Yeah, that's right. Bonding through shared trauma, right?
a lot of growth, definitely a lot of growth, and definitely a lot of, really, really look back in that time as a formative time.
So do you think that those experiences, especially working in those really, really busy pharmacies, did you kind of look for efficiencies, and is that sort of what started your thought process of maybe tech is where I want to be, I want to try and help streamline these processes? Is that what sparked your interest?
Yeah, definitely. Basically, it wasn't something I thought would be an opportunity back when I was working in pharmacy, but it was just one of those things that you do experience those problems, maybe frustrations with software or just difficulties with how it worked and maybe some workflows or bits of the user experience that weren't ideal, and there'd just be frustrations that you would deal with. And then ultimately, when the opportunity came up to help directly work on software that would remove those pain points and barriers that I would experience as a pharmacist in my day-to-day role. Naturally, I leapt to that opportunity and was really excited to help work on that directly and solve problems that I experienced myself and I saw my colleagues experience. That was really, 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 really grateful for that opportunity.
And so how did you come across that opportunity? Was it something that you were actively seeking, or you just kind of came across it, I don't know, on LinkedIn? How did you find out about this?
Yeah, so basically, naturally, I was always asking, I guess, looking for more opportunities where else I could grow in my career. The position became open for people to basically to interview for, and I found out about the role. I interviewed for it, and ultimately, yeah, I landed the role to help build this new clinical system. And that's where I started. It was basically, really, really excited to join that project very early on to shape the development and build of that new clinical system.
And so that clinical system that you're talking about, was this through your work with the digital health agency?
So we were building the MyScript platform. So it was a dispense system that was built bespoke by the Chemist Warehouse Group for their pharmacies.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Exciting.
Yeah. Really proud of that. Really proud of that product.
Yeah. And so when you took that role, moving into like your clinical pharmacist, you've been on the ground, and then now you're moving into a very product heavy role. How did you manage that being a pharmacist, and what were some of the skills that helped you with this MyScript dispense system that you were developing with the team?
Yeah, very good question. Naturally, I'm a bit tech nerdy, I guess, is one thing. So I'm just very comfortable with computers and Windows and all that. That is, I guess, the baseline, but also just being able to work well with the developers, being able to understand how to communicate them in a way, in the language that they operate in, but also integrating my pharmacy knowledge and being able to communicate to the developers with my pharmacy knowledge that was able to connect to them in a way that they understood from a technical perspective. So it was just being able to communicate the world and language of pharmacy to the developers in a way that helped them understand it. And that's basically through, I guess, strong written and verbal communication with them. That's kind of the starting point. And it just grew from there, basically.
Yeah, exactly. That's now that I'm in the product world myself now of building tech platforms, it really can be quite challenging trying to communicate the workflow of pharmacy and the industry of pharmacy to developers and tech teams. Pharmacy is such a unique industry, and there's so many nuances that you need to kind of explain, give them the background and context as to why something needs to be done a certain way, as opposed to just, okay, maybe this is the easiest build way for the developers, but maybe that's not going to give the outcome that you want from a workflow perspective. Is that something that you found?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like as pharmacists, you take your knowledge for granted, and then you just kind of would assume that everyone thinks like a pharmacist, but sometimes you just need to take the extra step to explain why pharmacists would want things a certain way, and being able to communicate that convincingly to build a bit more of the empathy around the plight that pharmacists would face and, everything that they're going through. Sometimes if you're pushing for something that's going to really help pharmacists, but it's just there's a lot more challenges to try to implement that thing. Sometimes you just need to work through and understand the challenges. Is it worth the challenges and the cost to go down that route? And basically just, try and understand, for getting all parties to understand, all the considerations that everyone has and striking the right balance. That's really key. That's so key in the world of software development and product.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, striking that balance. And I think that's both sides understanding that there are some things that you sometimes need to compromise on. That is definitely one of the things that I'm seeing in my own journey. But with that journey of implementing MyScript, but then not just from a let's build this platform, but then actually rolling it out across a national pharmacy chain where you really got to get the buy-in of not just the head office, but then also people on the ground, the pharmacists, and also the pharmacy teams. And so how did yourself and Chemist Warehouse successfully manage that change process?
Yeah, that was an incredible project as well, obviously rolling out the dispense system, which is fundamentally very key to pharmacy's operations. Yeah, a very large project in change management. We basically recruited a team to help us manage that whole process and help basically guide pharmacies, hold their hands, look after anything that technical that might come up so that it could be escalated and looked at, make sure we had a very carefully laid out plan to be able to roll it out to pharmacies, all the project management work and all the change management in place, and ultimately just making sure that the communication was there in place as well. There was the exec sponsorship, basically, that was able to help take the business along for the journey. So obviously the project sponsor was incredibly important. Also, their influence's help was vital to that project. And also just from a project level, just having the support to roll it out, having the change management in place. With Chemist Warehouse's very strong communication to its pharmacies, basically, and leveraging those methods of communication, speaking directly to owners and, hosting training sessions with owners. I remember I flew to Sydney just to basically explain my script to everyone in Sydney. So basically, just a lot of exercise and communicating and educating and preparing pharmacies with processes, documentation, everything they need to know to get themselves ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that experience that you had with the MyScript dispense system, it certainly would have assisted you when you worked at the Australian Digital Health Agency on rolling out the e-prescription change during COVID. And all of us listening to the episode now, it was a very challenging period for a number of different reasons. And e-prescriptions were very much, I guess, we saw the dream that it was going to solve a lot of our problems. And sometimes it also caused more problems as well on the ground. But overall, I think it was definitely a successful project, and it really helped to really drive, I think, pharmacy into coming along to that tech journey and kind of forcing us all to embrace it. Yeah, if you could maybe just touch on a couple of the key learnings from that project that you had, and are those learnings something that you now have brought across to your role at MedAdvisor?
Yeah, COVID-19 definitely brought a lot of pressures to definitely pharmacy and also the industry to roll out those changes. There was a lot of coordination between parties that naturally had never really coordinated before in the past. And what I mean is the dispense vendors, the network of dispense vendors, there's a lot of them, and the network of prescribed vendors as well, there's a lot of them. And they just naturally don't really talk to each other. So there's always a big risk in that I was personally worried about was, if the prescribed vendors all just decide to build e-prescriptions and launch them into the network, but maybe there weren't any dispensary systems that were upgraded and maybe it wasn't rolled out across pharmacy. And that was a big fear for e-prescriptions going into the network, but having no pharmacies to accept them. So we worked very closely with the government, and it was key for us to maintain those communications with all the various stakeholders and make sure that we understood our own timelines, and just make sure that that communication was always ongoing and working collaboratively with individuals, other parties, other prescribed vendors that we had never worked with before in the past. Just a lot more closer collaboration was a really important piece, and just kind of being upfront with, where things are at, when we were able to be ready for our software to sort of finish the build, and also just when we were able to actually be able to get it out there. That was important for us to basically communicate with everyone, so everyone was aware, and to make sure everyone was aware of the status of the rollout at all times. So it's very, very, very large number of stakeholders, another big change management exercise. But that was basically another big project where we had to make sure everyone was aligned in terms of timelines.
Oh, absolutely. That would have just been an absolutely massive project. Being a pharmacist on the ground at the time, it's very easy to, I guess, look at an approach and think, oh, well, this is frustrating, but yet not understanding all the hard work that goes on behind the scenes. And so it's very easy, I guess, to be a bystander, the final outcome, but understanding what it takes to get there. And one thing that keeps coming out in this conversation is communication. And I think as a pharmacist, our number one, I guess, skill set is communication. And so I think the fact that you had that Bachelor of Pharmacy behind you and that experience in really busy community pharmacies, being able to communicate with anyone and everyone, I think that definitely has translated to you being successful in these roles. But when we were preparing for this podcast and I was asking you some questions to think about what we could talk about, you mentioned that you felt like you had a bit of a chip on your shoulder about only having a Bachelor of Pharmacy. So I just would like you to share, how you overcame that and what that has taught you.
Yeah. So Basically, when I first jumped into my role in IT, it was a very, very different environment. There was a lot of conversations happening with terminology and concepts that I just did not understand. So there'd always be conversations between my development manager and anyone else who'd come in to walk through the door into the office, and we talking about SQL and strings and functions and all kinds of computer science concepts. And I was basically just felt like I just did not know a lot of things. And naturally that puts you in a position where you know, it's not always comfortable to not know a lot of things and you feel new. Because I guess as a pharmacist, you know, you're the expert in the pharmacy, you know everything going on in the pharmacy. But then to transition from that into a completely new environment, it's very interesting to encounter a lot of concepts and conversations that just fly over your head. And I guess being in that environment, I was always seen as the pharmacist. I wasn't like, it didn't feel like I completely connected with a lot of my colleagues who were very, very technical. So, and also just in general, like I'm like someone who likes to learn a lot of things. Just like learning new things helps me feel like I'm more, I guess, adaptable. So I would, basically spend for very many years of in my career, I'd always just be seeking out knowledge. There's so many online courses out there from reputable platforms. A lot of universities offer a lot of free courses online. There's a lot of other platforms to learn computer science concepts or really anything out there that you want to learn. So I just spent a lot of time seeking out free courses, doing certifications here and there, just to learn more about computer science and engineering and everything else in between. So that was a really exciting time. And just over time, with obviously paired with experience, just got me to a point where I just felt a lot more comfortable and confident about operating in technical environments where there's a lot of technical people engaging in a lot of technical conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that you sort out extra like courses and things. And I guess if I didn't realize there were so many free things or readily available courses online that you can do. And so maybe I might seek some of those out myself so I can understand some of the more terminology in IT. And I think as pharmacists, because we understand the academic way, sometimes it's like, okay, well, now I have to go back to university and do a 3-year degree in IT or something like that. But we don't need to become the expert in IT. We just need to be able to understand maybe some of that language and be able to communicate. And so I love the fact that you sort out some of the things that were just readily accessible for you, and you were able to take that knowledge and implement it much quicker than you would have been able to than if you decided to do a master's in IT or something like that.
Exactly. It was, it's always important to lean on being the expert in pharmacy, but at the same time, there's other experts out there, so you don't need to be the expert in everything. But at the same time, it's, helpful to skill up a little bit or as much as you want. You don't have to study a master's. You could. It's a nice to have, I would say, but definitely it's not a must have. And it's just up to you how much you want to. How much more do you want to learn, and just to get to a level that you're comfortable engaging with your colleagues.
Pharmacy Daily is a proud supporter of your pharmacy career podcast. If you're in the pharmacy world, it's a great resource to stay up to date with the latest industry news. To subscribe, just head to pharmacydaily.com.au to get the newsletter delivered straight to your inbox.
I'd love to chat to you now about something else that you participated in your career, and it's called PharmHack. And so maybe you could just give a bit of a background as to what PharmHack actually is for those that are listening that might not have heard of it, and then explain what that was like from your experience and what you learnt from that experience as well.
Yeah, PharmHack was a really exciting thing to happen to me in pharmacy. So basically, I think it was back in 2017, there was an article in AJP, the Australian Journal of Pharmacy, about a pharmacy hackathon. It was Australia's first pharmacy hackathon, and it sounded really exciting because back then I had this kind of rosy view of startups in Silicon Valley. They'd always be running hackathons and people would lock themselves in rooms for days and weekends and just build really cool stuff.
Sounds fun.
It just sounded really exciting. And I was like, wow, pharmacy, the first ever pharmacy hackathon happening. And so that was happening in Sydney. It was happening at Fishburners in Sydney, which is a really exciting location. And I found out about it and I thought, okay, well, let's just book a flight to Sydney for a weekend and just join the hackathon. So it was really funny when I landed there on the Friday evening was basically when people start to meet each other and mingle and start to form teams. And I would just, introduce myself and start talking to people, and I'd say I'd be from Melbourne, and everyone was like, "Oh wow, you came from Melbourne for this hackathon." It was everyone was quite surprised because everyone's just everyone were mostly just Sydney locals, and I think there was probably one other person from Melbourne. But yeah, ultimately I went there, didn't know a single person, very uncomfortable, not uncomfortable, but very new environment. So obviously, not something you're familiar with. It's always good to put yourself in I guess uncomfortable situations to see how you land and see how you grow and stuff. But yeah, it worked really well. Managed to convince people to join my team with an idea.
That's always good.
So that was good. That was a big first step. And we basically just worked together over the weekend. I had one technical person in my team. We built a mini prototype for my idea. We prepared a presentation, and then we managed to pitch that to the panel of judges on the final day, which was a Sunday. Ultimately, actually, we were lucky enough to come second amongst all the teams. There were 11 teams presenting. So it was, a really good opportunity to get explore this space of innovation and technology in pharmacy. It was definitely a situation where I had no idea how it would turn out, but I thought, why not? Just go for it, see what happens. And I was really pleased with, the fact that we're able to pull a team together and actually convince people that it was a good idea and meet a lot of cool people along the way. So that was a really awesome experience.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. What was your idea, by the way? What did you work on?
Yeah, so basically I pitched a app that would allow patients to take photos of their prescriptions to be able to submit to a network of pharmacies.
Oh, wow. Yes, okay. This is where it all started. I love it.
Yeah. So that's also very familiar with a certain functionality in the MedAdvisor app. So yeah, basically it's just something that I had talked about as an idea, and the way things work, I guess if you operate and work in a space for that long, you end up working on actual software and apps in pharmacy for pharmacies. So yeah, definitely a really incredible experience, and leaning into technology and innovation, the unknown, not sure how it's going to turn out, but just giving it a shot really, and then meeting some really cool people in the industry as well, and then ultimately that just helped me. Yeah, I guess one of those small stepping stones towards a career in technology and product and innovation in pharmacy.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And if a lot of people listening probably haven't maybe been part of a startup kind of community like Fishburners or participated in a hackathon before, they might not have even heard of it. But it's a really great space if you are interested in just exploring what's out there and being a part of these startup communities. I actually have been to Fishburners myself, done a couple of programs through them. And I know there's a lot in Melbourne as well, and even in other states as well. I know the government's also investing a lot of money in supporting entrepreneurship and startups, but you never know who you're going to meet. You never know what idea you might come up with. And like that idea that you had, Kenneth, and now years later, this is now just a basic functionality of MedAdvisor, which is really cool. And I participated in a pitch competition as well with one of my businesses, and it's extremely difficult for those of you that have never done it to be able to clearly articulate what the problem is, what the solution is, and basically try and convince people in the audience who have zero understanding of your industry. In a lot of these pitches, I don't know how long yours went for, but some of them are less than 2 minutes, sometimes even less than a minute. And it's very daunting. And it's funny when you're put in a position where you're not necessarily an expert, where as pharmacists, we're very comfortable. We're the expert in medicines and what we're doing in our pharmacies. But then to be put in a space where, you've never really done public speaking or something before in that space, it can be really scary. But I think it really does help you to enhance those communication skills and be able to articulate things really clearly and quite quickly in short periods of time, which I think is very important, not just in your role, Kenneth, in product, but then also just as a pharmacist in general, right? Like we have to be able to communicate complex information to customers or patients in such a short period of time. And so if you're ever able to participate in something like this, if you're listening or even just go and attend, a lot of these events are free to go and watch. And who knows, maybe you might find a future business partner there or a future idea that you can convince your company to take on. So, Kenneth, I'd love to chat to you now about what advice you would give to pharmacists that are a little bit curious as to what else is out there. Perhaps they've been working as a community pharmacist for a number of years, or they've worked in hospital, or they've been, they maybe feel like they've reached the top of their career journey, and they want to know what else is out there. From your experience, what advice would you give to those pharmacists?
Yep. First thing I would definitely say is be curious. Be curious about anything that you might not normally think of attending. So, for example, startup communities in your area, in your city, events, speaking events, networking events. If those things are not things that you would normally think or consider of attending, just be curious about it. Put yourself in uncomfortable positions, lean into situations that, are out of your comfort zone, and just be curious, because ultimately, you just don't know what's going to come about from those, interactions and events and nights. You might learn something new that might suddenly spark a little bit of inspiration on, a few days later. Or you just might meet some potential business partners. People also might have really good ideas. You just might, make a few friends, or you might just, walk away and realize, okay, well, maybe that's not for me, which is still valuable as well, because, it's all part of just understanding what things will be interesting to you. And ultimately, you can only really do that by trying new things. You learn more about yourself and you learn more about the world. So that's definitely a big one. Be curious and seek out new things, because you just don't know where that's going to lead you. And that is, I think we're so lucky in Australia. There's just so much going on, whether it's in pharmacy or adjacent to pharmacy or in healthcare or anything. There's just so many opportunities to go out there, meet people, learn new things. That's a key one. And the second one is just always be learning as well, which is kind of closely related to being curious. If you're slightly interested in technology, just learn about, what is software development, what's involved, what's an app, what makes up an app, how do you build an app, how do apps work, or try it yourself, build an app yourself. There's just there's just so much knowledge out there. There's all the knowledge of the world out there at your fingertips, and all it takes is for you to just jump in and start learning. There's lots of really incredible books out there. There's always incredible podcasts, which are amazing as well. You can have the wisdom of a person's entire career in a book. There's just so many incredible things you can learn. And it just takes a little just jumping in and trying new things and learning new things.
Oh, absolutely. Do you actually have any books or podcasts that you would recommend to pharmacists that are interested maybe in innovation or being curious? Anything that you've listened to or read yourself that has been a game changer for you?
Yeah, classic podcasts. I don't quite listen to it as much these days, but Tim Ferriss' podcast is definitely one I would probably call one of the original podcasts on startups and innovation. That's been around for a very long time. There's been a lot of incredible conversations on his platform. It's always great to hear him just talk to, for example, like the founder of Airbnb and how they started in their bedroom and came about with their ideas and then led to building Airbnb. And that's an incredible thing to learn about and just hear firsthand from the founders of those companies like that. So that was great. That's a great podcast I'd listen to. And I guess in terms of books, at the moment, I'm reading Diary of a CEO. And that podcast is also quite interesting. He has quite interesting guests on that podcast, less on innovation and more on like a broader range of topics. But that podcast is also something that's an interesting one. Less on, again, on innovation and technology, but a broader range of topics. But his book itself in particular, I actually find, that's a really...
set out to have that type of influence. But I think you haven't described this in the way I'm about to, but I think your approach to leadership is potentially like seeking to understand the person and see things from their point of view, and then also communicating that why and that vision. I think they definitely some key themes that I've seen come out of this conversation.